Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new show of Data Talks. I'm Wolfgang Fengler, CEO of World Data Lab. This is a very special show. It's with a dear partner and friend, Shamina Singh. Shamina Singh has a lot of awards, and if I would count them, then the show is over. So I'll just mention there's a Corporate Impact Award I think she got yesterday from the, maybe you can briefly share a bit, Shamina, of what award you received and how many recently you received. But the big thing that brought us together recently was the the ASEAN Inclusive Growth Summit in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, a remarkable event. We'll share a bit more, but there's a lot on the video and communication by the Mastercard team and the Mastercard Inclusive Growth team. So welcome to the show, Shamina.
Wolfgang, so glad to be here. Long time coming.
Absolutely. And it's so also exciting to do these many things with you and to learn about your team and how much impact you created. The center you're leading as the founding president has been around for 10 years. Tell me a little bit about time before the center and what got you into it and what philosophy shaped the center.
Yeah, so I think, well, first, thanks again for having me here. It's hard to think back for the time before the center, but if people can remember, there was a time actually when cell phones were not all over the world, where people, for the most part, were transacting in cash instead of using their phone or using a card or things like that. So 10 years ago, when we started the center, the idea behind it was that the world was rapidly shifting from an analog economy to a digital economy, and then rapidly going from a digital economy to a data-driven economy. So in order to capture that shift, but in a way that made sure, or that tried to ensure, that people weren't getting left behind in those rapid transitions, we created the Center for Inclusive Growth as a way to enable Mastercard to use its assets, its technology, its network, its capital, its expertise in a way that would shrink the time that it takes for people and small business owners to make that rapid transition into the digital economy. So it really was about seeing something that was on the horizon and rapidly responding to create an infrastructure to support people and planet in a rapidly changing environment.
Mm. And Shamina, walk us back to the year 2015. Indeed, it feels like a long time ago. And in that moment when some of the digital transformation started to fully appear, you personally, which situation were you in and what made you decide to take on this challenge? Tell us a bit the story of 2015.
Yeah, so look, I think, in 2015, we were really honing the theory of the case around the center. And we engaged in deep research and building an evidence base around what interventions were needed in the space. And we decided that similar to the Mastercard network, so remember, Mastercard is a company that engages in connecting buyers and sellers who may not know one another, and then protecting those transactions in the process, which also creates a ton of data that also allows us to engage in every facet of the global economy. So we landed on a theory of the case related to the center that says networks determine your future. Access to networks is one of the key components that helps people, individuals, communities, countries grow or shrink based on their success. So for us, the network that we were focused on back in 2015 was really that financial services network, was ensuring that more people, not less, had proximity to that, to the network, whether it's through transactions, internet, data, services, whatever that is. So in 2015, we were really building the muscle in order to land on that network and that theory of change. But the biggest component of that is because we had spent a solid 3 years really building that evidence base, Mastercard decided to create the Mastercard Impact Fund, which was an endowment basically of $500 million to support the center's programs.
Great.
That started in 2015, but then it actually became real in 2017 when there was legislation that supported investment in the Mastercard Impact Fund. So from 2015 to 2017, we were building on the evidence base and then building the funding structure to allow us to ensure that in between 2017 and beyond, we really had the capital investment to support the center's programs.
Shamina, the way you outline it, it also makes people realize how the center is integrated into the whole ecosystem, into the company, which seems to be a bit different than other corporations are, engaging on impact matters. That reminds me of this a very often quoted CEO quote from Mastercard. And for the viewers, especially from Germany, realize that Michael Miebach is the CEO, the German with leading the company with the far highest market cap of any German-led company, if I may say so. But he said, if it's not inclusive, it's not relevant. If it's not, what did he say? Remind me. If it's not inclusive,
he said, if it's not inclusive, it doesn't scale, and if it doesn't scale, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Tell us in that way how that philosophy basically embodies the whole company.
Yeah, so I think Michael is a good friend, but a very strong leader as well. And so, in terms of background for him as CEO, he actually started at Mastercard as the regional head of Africa for Mastercard. So he built the infrastructure that guides our business today around financial inclusion. He understands very deeply what it means to be connected to the formal economy. And he was an instrumental architect behind a company pledge to bring 1 billion people into the formal economy by 2025. And so because of Michael's deep understanding and deep proximity to people who are disconnected from the formal financial system, he's brought that knowledge, but he's also brought the perspective that also means that we can bring in now data, the technology, the leapfrogging opportunities that AI brings to the table now that will help support people who have now entered the digital economy, entered the formal economy, help accelerate their path to financial health and financial success, which is really the basis of our partnership, Wolfgang. And so I think that really does, it started at the top. It started with our board creating the Center for Inclusive Growth, went right on through to our CEO, Michael Miebach, who is German, but who is steeped in the notion of financial inclusion and connection to the digital economy, and then also understands the importance now of connecting digitization and people connecting to the digital economy to data in order to ensure that they continue on that path from access to usage to security to health.
Brilliant, Shamina. And this is the theme that indeed we have been working a lot together. And I think you framed it as like closing the data divide. Give us a bit more additional perspective on this. And maybe if I may frame it, right, there is this, so previously it was called the digital divide, and there was a sense, the world could drift apart. But then at the same time, with low cost transaction platforms and spreading of the phone and connectivity everywhere, there's also evidence that there's been a lot of inclusion, not just because some people in Asia especially became richer, but because it became easier to access the systems. And you spoke to this quite a bit. So yeah, give us your perspective on the still existing data divide.
Yeah, so look, the simplest way to put it is that if data is the new currency, not everyone has a wallet, and it is expanding. So, probably I would say 4 years ago, as part of our work around building the theory of the case for the center and looking at all of the assets of Mastercard in a way that could ensure that they serve both people and planet, we had to look at data. And, the thing about data is there is a capabilities gap that is taking place that I think might be more insurmountable than the income inequality gap. Because think about, income inequality certainly is also widening. But through policies, through job creation, through wealth creation, through what we're seeing in Asia, there are opportunities to close that gap. When it comes to data, when it comes to AI, it's a capabilities gap. If you don't have the knowledge and the know-how to understand data, to access it, to make it work for you, not against you, then we're starting to see a generational divide, a capabilities gap that will be, in some respects, harder to cross. And so the work that we've really focused on with you and with others like organizations such as data.org and other partners is to try to build the capacity of individuals, of small business owners, of social sector organizations to realize the power of data, realize the power of AI, so that they might be able to leapfrog the technology in some way to jump ahead of what is going to be required to not only survive in the AI age, but to actually thrive in the AI age. And we have a lot of programs that we are, working on in that respect. I'll give you one example. We have on the small business side, our signature initiative is called Strive. And it's called Mastercard Strive because what we're doing there is ensuring that small business owners have three things that drive their growth: access to capital, access to digital and data, and access to the networks and know-how that will help them succeed in a rapidly growing data economy. That's really important because what we also know about data experts, like many who are listening right now, we have this wonderful, solid group of people around the world who are so smart and so brilliant on data. But without the context of what data can do and why it's important and where it should be leveraged to uplift our society, we might run afoul of the original intention of our work. And so a big message, a big reason why I'm so glad to be with your listeners today, Wolfgang, is to really drive home that point that, some people call it left brain, right brain. Some people call it, spirits and substance. Some people call it context versus, computers. And so, but the point is, you have to have both, right? You've got to make sure that the intellect and the intelligence and the ability to create data that is usable, the analytics behind it, also has the context to make sure that we're understanding how this is impacting our families, how it's impacting our communities, how we're ensuring that, again, it uplifts everyone. And I think that's a big role of programs like Strive, like our partnership with you, Wolfgang, like our support of data.org, like our partnership with Garia in India, which is looking to lift up farmers and ensure that farmers are actually part of the language learning models that are being included in the AI systems. It's because you have to have all of these things coming together in order to ensure that we create the incentives for a race to the top, not a race to the bottom. And that's really why I want to make sure that I'm connected with you, connected with your listeners, is because in this moment, the incentives are being created that will either bring us up or bring us down. And my sincere hope with the Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth, with our partnership with you, with our hopefully the connection to your listeners, is that we will be architects of something that creates a more powerful and well-balanced society.
Well, this was really a fantastic overall pitch. Thanks so much, Shamina. And I like the left brain, right brain, but I never heard the spirits and substance. So I'll remember that also. But for us, just to reflect on what you said, it's right. If you talk about data or math or whatever statistics, then you lose like already 95% of the population or the listeners. So our job is to make it simple, not more complicated. It's actually the smart people make it simpler, but there can be complicated things behind, and that's always then the ultimate test. And you put it so well. You mentioned a lot about AI, and there is, you'd call it a little dilemma, because all what you said makes it now possible for many people in the world to get connected, or even to contribute and benefit. And somebody in my extended family actually was part of Sam Altman's team to do WorldCoin. You scan your iris, and I know many Kenyans who actually got money out of this. So it has an effect, but there's an aspect of privacy as well. So, and I know the Mastercard in general does a lot of focus now on not just privacy, but also cybersecurity. Tell us a bit about this tension, inclusion versus privacy almost.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. And again, one of these questions that we have to think about on the front end of this conversation, not as a response to the conversation. We strongly believe that there's such importance around regulatory behavior in this moment and in this time. But what we've seen with rapidly developing technology is that sometimes regulation isn't keeping up with what's actually happening. That's when it's incumbent upon companies, leaders, startups, data scientists to think through the values-based approach to the technology that they're creating and the data that they're analyzing and building. The example of this for Mastercard is, Mastercard's been using AI for a long time, to your point, because we've used it as a way to detect fraud in transactions for many years. And so for Mastercard and for the center, AI is not a new phenomenon. It's been something we've used for many years because that's how we've been protecting transactions. And that's how we've been protecting such an important part of the economy, is the ability to buy and sell. And so as part of that, we did work with our chief privacy officer. We worked with our chief data officer. We've worked with our lawyers. We also worked with our business owners and the team at the center to really develop a policy pre-regulation about how should Mastercard be engaging in this conversation. And we landed on a very simple three-part model. From the consumer perspective, the data belongs to the consumer. It belongs to you. You should benefit from the data. You should decide how it's used. Mastercard's job is to protect it. Very simple. And that has been our approach, that we have seen regulation follow, which we appreciate. But it also means that what we're seeing on the other side of that, though, is that we also believe in the free flow of data. In order for data to be useful, it has to be able to move. We have to be able to, in MasterCard parlance, have cross-border engagement. People travel, people move. Unfortunately, politics doesn't move and policies don't move. And so what we're trying to do is ensure that in any way we can, that there's free flow of data, free flow of information, free flow of people, free flow of ideas. And so by creating a model at the center and for the company that presupposes privacy around data for the consumer and protection of that data and protection of the transaction and the consumer, our hope is that it will encourage others to adopt those same types of measures, that regulators will also look at it in a similar way, and that we can open up the channels of data and free flow, not close them down.
Fantastic, Shamina. That reminds me of two things. One is we had this with mobile money in Kenya, that regulation followed innovation, which you also just outlined. And the other part, though, when you describe, the data is with the person, and Mastercard protects it. Give me your view on still the concern, I would say, as many Europeans, at least I have that concern, that GDPR, for example, overregulates and stifles innovation. So, any perspective on getting that balance right between regulation and innovation, or the risk of stifling innovation?
Yeah, so I think that you know, maybe I won't speak to GDPR or the
Mm,
regulation,
mm, mm,
specifically, but I think in principle, what's important is to keep the dialogue open, is to ensure that we're bringing in all parts of the conversation in such a way that we can get to the
mm,
answer that solves the issue, the root
mm,
issue that we're trying to solve, which is, protection and privacy, but also acknowledges and respects that the opportunity for innovation
mm,
is going to extend around that. But I think the purpose and the value of privacy at the core, privacy by design, privacy by default, is a
mm,
very important. How it's accessed, how it's regulated, I think is a conversation that continues to evolve, and I'm glad. And we need to continue that
mm,
conversation, because what we don't want to do is disadvantage any part of the ecosystem. And I think what we also don't want to do is inhibit the innovation that can occur in the right way, not the wrong way. And I think that it's a hard job for a regulator in this environment, because there's so many facets to get your head around. But I also think it's the reason why, as operators in this space, not only do we have an opportunity, but we have a responsibility to bring a values-based approach to the conversation.
mm. Thanks for that perspective, Shamina. You mentioned AI. AI is affecting us now. It'll affect us even more the next 10 years. What do you see as the center's role in 2035? What's some of your crystal ball for the next 10 years?
Wow.
Mm,
To think about it, AI 10 years from now is almost mind blowing. Wolfgang, I rely on you to tell me what the data is saying and what the trends I should
mm,
be looking at say, much like you have for Asia and the middle
mm,
class. Um, but I think for the center, we have this theory that I think still holds true, that networks power the modern economy, and proximity to networks determines success in an ever-changing environment. And I think that that theoretical framework
mm,
still holds even 10 years from now. So whether it is your proximity to a natural resource, water, energy, or your proximity to financial services, or your proximity to the technology and the data that surround all of that, it's going to determine how successful you are, how successful your country is, how successful your community is. But I think the skill that I would say is going to continue to be important is the skill of learning, the skill of agility, um, and the openness to learning new things, because this is happening very quickly. I think about my parents, right? So I am the daughter of immigrants from India
mm,
who came in the 60s, right? And for my parents, they had this innovation mindset. I mean, to leave everything they've ever known in search of to become closer to a network that provided more opportunity at that time for themselves and their families to grow their career, grow their ability to learn, they moved, right? So they put themselves closer to a network. At that time, had you told them that there'd be something called the internet, or something called a cellular phone, or something, uh,
mm,
like they would have said, you're crazy. But their mindset was open. their mindset was about agility. Their mindset has been about new ideas, the promise of something new, the potential of something better. And I think that's what I've inherited from them. It's what's with Mastercard's support driven the Center for Inclusive Growth. And I think will continue to drive us, but hopefully drive society as we traverse these big gaps together.
No, that's a great perspective, and that a bit matches what my own beliefs. Basically, yeah, we'll probably experience the next internet type of disruption or change. It'll be mind blowing, but we have been there before. Some of your parents have been there before, and some things have been bad, but net positive has been good if it's shaped well, a bit as you outlined. I think that would be my own reflection here. That's great. I have, Shamina, normally my final question, I come to in a minute, but I can't go to this before. We didn't talk briefly about these. I say to everybody, not just to you, these incredible summits and this incredible orchestration. And what I haven't told you yet, what really impressed me, because I saw you with Elton John just on the video, but with Amal Clooney there as well. And you have also a very special interview technique that I want to learn from. Just tell us a bit about these experiences with Elton John and with Amal Clooney, and how that fitted in the overall orchestration of an incredibly substantive but also event that was just also joyful, I must say.
Yeah. So listen, I think that the interesting moment here is that technology and policy and the world of data, it doesn't just belong to academics or data scientists or policymakers. It belongs to all of us. So, Elton John and his team are thinking about this because they're thinking about their for him, it's about the Elton John AIDS Foundation, right? And so he's thinking a lot about how is AIDS going to be eradicated now with this new technology and what's happening here. And I think that that's something that he was very interested in. And so to see the platform that he had at the Inclusive Growth Summit was a way that he could learn from, but also get his message out to communities that he wouldn't normally have access to. Same for Amal Clooney. She's very interested in technology and the role of law and human rights. And she wants to ensure that people who don't have access to law, who don't have access to legal protections, what is the role of technology around helping them get access? So the through line, whether you're an Amal Clooney, an Elton John, or a small business owner, or the deputy king of Malaysia, who was also at the summit, is that it's about inclusion. That it takes us back to Michael Meebach's quote from the beginning. When you are trying to realize the possibility and the potential for everyone everywhere, you think about inclusion. And everybody wants that. Everybody sees not only the commercial power in that, but it means that we're all going to benefit the more people that can participate and reach their full economic potential.
The power of inclusion, socially and economically, almost the theme of this talk here. And all of you who wanted to see these interventions by the Deputy King, the interview with Amal Clooney at the recent Asia Inclusive Growth Summit, ASEAN Inclusive Growth Summit, are all available on the Master Inclusive Growth websites and communication. Shamina, with this comes to the end. I wanted to part with, leave you with your closing thoughts, but can you package them with your favorite numbers? I always end this show with asking my guest about your favorite number and the story behind that number.
Okay. Well, I have two, if that's okay. So the first is a billion. So 1 billion, because I think what you and I are working on is we know that 1 billion people have joined the middle class in Asia and other parts of the world over the last 10 years, and 1 billion more are going to join the middle class over the next 10, which is going to completely transform consumption patterns and behaviors, both from a sustainability perspective, but also from an inclusive growth perspective. So that's a big number. It's also the number that Mastercard committed to bringing 1 billion people into the financial system by this year. So 1 billion is a big number, and it's an important number for me. I think the other number for me is the number 4, because I'm the fourth daughter out of 5 girls, and 4 is also about service. So we are working for the betterment of society. We're working for inclusive growth. We're making sure that economies benefit for everyone everywhere. So the number 4 and also the number 1 billion.
That's wonderful, Shamina. And it's an interesting coincidence that my kids have also number 4 as their favorite number, always on their jerseys on the back. And congratulations to your parents for having 5 girls. I only have 2, but we're all happy with all our girls. So thank you so much for being on this show. This was a wonderful episode. And to your viewers, I'll see you again soon. And I'll try my best to have as amazing guests as Shamina Singh. Thank you so much.